Hey, I hope everybody had a great weekend. I just wanted to make the most of our Thursday meeting. And so, in order to do that, I wanted to kind of go ahead and set the table for that discussion and do a bunch of maybe dialogue preemptively to sort of cut down on the need to do it at the meeting so that there's less of a monologue or a need to set up context or whatever. So I wanted to send this out and hopefully allow you to kind of get through it in preparation for that meeting so that meeting can be as helpful as possible and as efficient as possible. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you all for engaging really as owners around this whole thing and really caring a great deal. I love that our team is engaged and passionate. I think it indicates that we're a team of leaders and owners, and leaders have strong opinions, and owners care a lot more than people who are just punching a clock. And this leads to higher levels of unfiltered debate, and I view the presence of all of that energy as really a sign of health. I think the energy we're having around this discussion, because the stakes are high, it's important, it's going to affect a lot of us, it's going to affect our team. But the energy and care that I think you all demonstrate in all this, it makes me feel like A, like I said, you care, and B, that you feel like your opinion matters, and that's a sign of health to me. So I love watching and working with your commitment energy, and it's obviously so much more exciting to work with commitment energy than just compliance energy. So just a quick reminder about change. This is nothing you don't already know, but just a quick reminder that change is a constant and will always be a constant for us. It won't always be equally significant. It won't always have the same size and scope. But we're always going to be tweaking and perfecting. And it's really the only way to ensure our viability for the long term is to provide increased value to our customer. And our customers' needs are not static. They're growing, they're changing. And one skill we're going to have to be outstanding at is listening to and learning from the needs of our customer and adjusting to those needs. So the goal is not change for change's sake, but when our customers' needs become clear, and we need to change with them. And more often than not, that change will be incremental, but periodically it's going to be significant and more complex. And so just a quick zoom out reminder of sort of the whole S-curve and how it involves change. The S-curve is something you're very familiar with. It's the pathway of every organization in every industry, everywhere, for all time. And there's a startup window of time, then there's a high growth period, a maturity, and a decline. And that can vary over time, but that's kind of an unbreakable, sort of observable principle in every type of industry. So it's true for us as well. And as you already know, that the key is for any organization to have longevity over time, what has to happen is as that high growth phase begins to plateau, that organization, that business needs to reinvent itself. And it needs to reinvent itself at a time when it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to reinvent itself. That key window is, hey, we're still growing, we're still on top of things, this thing feels like it's working, but we need to reinvent ourselves. And that's what's going to extend the life cycle of this. So if you look at our movement from Partner Model 1.0, which was the first decade of partners, to Partner Model 2.0, it's kind of that massive reinvention. It's that huge overhaul, giant upheaval, lots of changes, etc. The move from 2.0 to 3.0 is on that new curve. It's not a whole new reinvention. We could have called it 2.1 if we wanted to. It's smaller in scope, it's smaller in size. It's not insignificant, as your discussions are bearing out. It's not insignificant at all, but it's not the same as reinvention, but it's the significant change we have to make to really set ourselves up for high growth. And then hopefully during high growth, which Lord willing will come, the changes we would make would be more incremental. And again, that's until we reach that place where we would need to consider, hopefully years from now, what does Partner Model 4.0 look like? So because of this significant adjustment, the stakes are significant. And bullet point 3 there, therefore this discussion has been kind of messy. I know you felt that as it's been in your teams and it's kind of overlapped and stepped on each other, and some people were solving the same problem as others. But I look at that and say that conversation is both inevitable and it's very normal. Our system is like a car engine, and it has all kinds of interconnected systems, and changing one part impacts the other parts. So there's kind of an unavoidable and necessary messy complexity that accompanies these discussions. with Partner Model 3.0. And remember, last year we talked about preparation for this. In preparation for this, we kind of talked about this. Hey, we've got these interlocking circles of clarity and strategy and stewardship. And as we move around in each of them, they're going to touch one another and they're going to set off different conversations. And it's like, oh, these dominoes fell over here. That affected this over here. So the bottom line is that if this process has felt a little confusing or disjointed or messy, that's always going to be the case. That's always to be expected. Now, that does not mean there's not better ways and more efficient ways of managing this conversation. Certainly, looking back, I could have done a better job at managing the efficiency of this conversation. But I would say no matter how good you get at managing these types of conversation, there's going to be some messiness that's unavoidable. There's just no perfect way when you have a bunch of leaders trying to figure out a solution. So, having said that, again, it's very important not to let that necessary complexity grow into unhealthy frustration. Having some parts of this conversation are separate teams, that's a very helpful thing. It's very helpful to talk about solving our customer problems at that level. But when the conversation begins to feel like it's not making progress, that can be frustrating. And I think some of you are starting to feel this, like, hey, are we talking in circles? Are we stepping on each other too much here? And some of that frustration's been connected to the what, and some of it's connected to the how. And the what is we might have differences of opinion on the correct solution moving forward, and the how might be why aren't we hashing more of this out in the same room instead of our separate teams. So it doesn't really matter, but the key is I don't want to let that frustration grow to a point where eventually the energy and engagement start to shut down. So we are having this meeting now. So a couple things I want to ask you in preparation for this meeting, if you would consider. First of all, I'll just let you know that I'm going to be sharing with you a few thoughts that are certainly incomplete. It's partly why I want your feedback is I'm giving you just a 50,000 foot, 40,000 foot view of how I see the playing field, and I'm going to forget some parts of the conversation you told me, etc. So please don't get frustrated about that. But I would like all of us to think of a couple things before we have that meeting in preparation. And the first I would just say is please remain open-minded and open-handed. And no matter how convinced any of us individually feel headed into this meeting, be open to the perspective of others. If we come to this meeting, have already decided the right answer, it's going to be harder to hear not just other perspectives, but maybe even an idea or two that's going to make whatever our answer is that much better, incrementally better. So typically, the best decisions are the ones where all of us feel like we walk away with getting something that we thought was we wanted, but maybe not everything. I would love to live in a world where we walked away with 100% alignment, but more likely, I hope to find a place where you guys all walk away saying Justin got the decision mostly right. If everybody's saying that, I feel like maybe we're on the right track. The other is that we might all agree on the values that need to be weighed as a part of these decisions, but just because we have the same agreement on what the values are doesn't mean we weigh them the same. And a lot of sometimes disconnect comes when one person has the values listed in a list of importance one way, and the person next to them has the same values, but they're shuffled in different priorities. So at some point we might have to make a decision that's based on values that are weighted differently than you or I or others weight them. So just be aware of that. That's just a part of it. And then lastly, the most important voice has yet to speak. And all of this, everything we're doing is in preparation to hear from the customer. And no matter how passionate any of us individually are, our thoughts or opinions really are secondary to our customers. And our job is to get as much clarity and alignment as possible as a team prior to presenting a solution to our customer, or really a subset of our customer in the advisory team, and have their opinion really influence our direction. And there's all kinds of nuance to that, and just because they want something doesn't mean we can do it. But we have to remember as we discuss things this Thursday, this really is in preparation for hearing from our customer. So a couple of you asked about communication thoughts, and here's just sort of a rough idea of what I'm thinking as far as communication. What I'm hoping is this Thursday we get some clarity or close to clarity, and then next, it needs to go to Lane in early April, I'm hoping, first or second week of April. From there to the advisory board. in late April, and Lane would like a presentation to the management team as well if we're going to be changing our pricing structure, et cetera. And then there's Drive, May 6th and 7th. So what I'm targeting for Drive is that we would have enough clarity that the LPCs that are presenting to lead pastors, really any of us that are talking to churches, can hopefully sketch out this new model. Now, that is a target, but I would not want to rush to that goal if we didn't feel like we were really ready. So if we have to wait, we will. But that's the target I'd like us to push for. And then over the summer, really roll it out to the whole network and get their input. And then my goal would be by September 1st that every single one of our current partners has crystal clarity on what the model is and also has told us what they intend their 2020 plan to be. And maybe because of budgeting, et cetera, that might have to wait a little bit, but that's my heart's desire. So I have a couple questions for you and then another section.